Welcome to Encounter, where we celebrate putting faith into action and community leaders who live out compassion, grace, and love. We're a program of the Broome County Council of Churches that addresses food insecurity through Chow and the Greater Good Grocery, provides hospital and jail ministry, builds wheelchair ramps, and assists neighbors with transportation and shopping services through Faith in Action volunteers. We invite you to the conversation. Encounter your neighbors as we learn to walk together in love and kindness.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack. I know it's hard for most of us to believe that spring is actually on the way. The end of February has been anything but warm, but we are slowly getting towards spring. And when spring happens, oftentimes it coincides with the season of Lent. Lent is one of those seasons within the church where we begin with a season of repentance and we end with the resurrection of Jesus. And one of the readings that often accompanies Ash Wednesday is this reading from Joel. It says, "Put on sackcloth and lament, you priests. Wail, you ministers of the altar. Come pass the night in sackcloth, you ministers of my God. Grain offerings and drink offerings are withheld from the house of your God. Sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land to the house of the Lord your God, and cry to the Lord your God." Seems like Joel is not having a very good day. And as a matter of fact, when you look at the context of Joel, you find that Joel is not the entire world is kind of shifting on Joel. But yet we read this to remind ourselves not only of the shifting world that we live in, but also that spring is coming and that it is kind of a spring cleaning of the soul. So to help me talk a little bit about Lent and what Lent means and the way that it kind of enters into the life of the church are two ministers from our area, neither of whom are strangers to Encounter. Both have been on before. The first is Carolyn Stow. She is the pastor at Sarah Jane Johnson United Methodist Church. Welcome to Encounter today, Carolyn.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And we have Teressa Sivers, who is the fairly newly installed, but it's been almost a year now. It'll be a year toward the end of this year, toward July, I think. She's at Central United Methodist Church. Welcome to Encounter today, Teressa.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So what do you all think about Lent? Like how important is Lent to the life of the church?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think for me, Lent is probably one of my favorite seasons because I think it's a time when we really intentionally examine our soul and our relationship with God and with one another. It's a time to kind of slow down a little bit our pace, to breathe a little deeper, and to delve into kind of the meat of who we are and who we are with God. And the 40 days, the readings are beautiful, the journey is beautiful, and it leads, of course, to the resurrection. It leads us through the cross and into the resurrected life. And so for me, it's just a really profound time of spiritual awakening.
And for you, Carolyn?
I love that you brought us to the resurrection because I often think of something that Adam Hamilton said. And what he said is, Christmas is important, but without Easter, Christmas really doesn't have any meaning. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like our entire faith life evolves around Easter, right? That's the it. And the season of preparation for that has to be equally important.
Yeah, it's interesting to me when I was this would take you way back 40 years ago when I was in college. I did a course on the early church, and the professor had us read F.F. Bruce, one of his books, and I forgot this when I went into the test, and so. When I went into the test, they asked, what are the two most important parts of the church life? And I put down Christmas and Easter. Easter, of course, was one of the two, but the other one was Pentecost. Mm-hmm. So Easter and Pentecost are the two most important lives, especially within the early church, for the church. And yet Christmas is sometimes eclipsed Easter. as far as importance is concerned. Now, it's hard for us to really put our minds around that, right? So why is it that we've done that, do you think?
Money. I'm so sorry.
I got it.
Presents.
I'm with you. We can say that.
That's all it is. It's just money.
And there's this beautiful nostalgia about Christmas. You put the tree up and the lights and, the gifts under the tree and the music. And there's just this kind of reminiscence that happens.
Even the church, think about what we do during Advent, right? Hope, love, joy, peace. These are our buzzwords. Lent, feel bad about yourself. Get into your sinful nature, right? Wait a second.
That whole Joel reading is nothing but sackcloth and ashes, right?
Sign me up.
Sign me up. That's where I want to go.
Right.
What's interesting to me is, and I grew up in evangelical, so I'm one of those folks that has kind of gotten into Lent through the back door. When I was growing up, and this goes way back, they were in the middle of doing a 7 Habits of Highly Effective People series in church, and one of those 7 habits fell right on Easter. And the pastor, of course, preached on the seven habits, and then at the end he said, "Oh, and by the way, Happy Easter." So for us, Lent didn't mean anything. It was like something, and it wasn't until I got into seminary that it actually meant anything. And when I started thinking about, what does God think about human beings? And then the whole idea of Ash Wednesday. I went to my first Ash Wednesday service, and I'm like blown away by the theology and by the by what was going on within the service. Remember you are mortal. You are, remember death. Memento mori, I think, is the word for it in Latin. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is pretty heavy stuff. And it wasn't 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's you're being incredibly ineffective.
You're doomed. Right?
You're doomed. You're like waiting for it. So let's talk a little bit about that whole section from Easter. Well, begin with Ash Wednesday. Why is Ash Wednesday important to your church and to you?
I think Ash Wednesday speaks deep into the heart of who we are. It reminds us that there are parts of our lives that hurt. There are parts of our lives we're struggling with, and we're not going to gloss over it for a few minutes.
Right.
And what I really love about Ash Wednesday is that here you have the palms of Palm Sunday, that huge parade that happens, burned now down into ash. And I mix them with healing oils. And so not only are you recognizing the areas of your life that may be burnt, but you're also applying healing to that at the same time. And then we come to the table of Holy Communion, where we are reminded that grace abounds always, and that's going to be what carries us through these 40 days as we both acknowledge the areas that need work, the areas that aren't all glossy and pretty, and the healing that is with us at all times. And they're both and. It's neither either or.
I love that. Healing oils. I actually use olive oil, the traditional. And for me, it's not only does Ash Wednesday give you permission to not be perfect, right? To be human and mortal and fallible. And it gives you permission to look at that darker side of who you are. And yet God still feeds you.
Yeah.
And you're still welcome at the table. And you're expected at the table anyway. It also says, I love you anyway.
Right.
I'm willing to touch one of the more intimate parts of your body in remembrance of this. It's...
Yeah, and you mark them too, right? Yeah, and the mark is usually, in the sign of the cross on the person's forehead or on the back of their hand.
If the ashes work the way you want them to.
I know. It often will fall off, but people will be usually walking around through the day with that reminder on their forehead. And then from there we go through. You and Teressa, you had said that at the beginning it's 40 days, and we go through 40 days of Lent itself. So what is the importance of the 40 days?
You want to grab that one?
Well, I mean, there's the basic obvious, how much time Jesus spent in the desert,
Right.
being tempted, the 3 temptations. I'm purposely not going to mention them because I use that. Can anybody remember what the 3 temptations are? And I don't mean the singing group, right? And,
Right.
right? And it's an interesting thing because we don't remember the 3 temptations. But if I told you if I sang the jingle to a commercial, you would know what I'm referring to, right? It's a little game that I have.
If I started singing My Girl.
Right? Right? You could do it, right? But these are the 40 days that we wrestle with that darkness we've been tickling on. These are the 40 days that we say, okay, Jesus, I'm in this space in between now. What do you want me to become? Help me become that. Guide me and direct me, and I'm going to sit with this. And I love the cocoon metaphor because I'm now in the ooze and the gel and the ick and I'm stuck in the mire. But I know something beautiful is going to come.
Yeah.
I think it also references back to the 40 years that the Israelites spent in the Exodus, in the
Yes.
desert, in the wilderness, and that time of kind of stripping away all that had happened to them as slaves in Egypt and learning a new pattern of life. That we're now God's people, and this is how God wants us to share. This is how God wants us to live in community. This is what it looks like to walk God's way in the world, which is different than what the world looks like. So I love this kind of both and. Again, I love that both and. It's that 40 days with Jesus in the desert, 40 years with the Israelites in the wilderness.
For me, that both and reminds us that the Bible is an entirety, right? You're referencing Old Testament. I'm looking at New Testament and the letters, and our faith life is an entire life. It's not just this portion.
So this goes back a long time ago as well, but there was a book that Kazuki Koyama, who's a Japanese liberation theologian, wrote called 3 Mile an Hour God, and it reminds us that of that wandering, the wandering aspect of the Israelites as they went through the wilderness, and that oftentimes we live in a fast-paced world where everything is instant gratification, whereas when you reference 40 years of wandering in the wilderness or even your own life, you realize, especially as we get older, that instant gratification, well, it might have worked for us at one point in our life, but now it can't. You have to be in it for the long haul, the discipline, the slowness of that aspect, of the wandering, the walking. 3 miles an hour is what we genuinely stroll at. And if you get much faster than that, then you begin to develop a sweat and you start to pant. So this idea that we're entering into a countercultural time within the life of the church is very important, I think.
I was at a Black History Month celebration last night. I think it was you who even talked about the march across the bridge, and how far did they make it every day?
10 miles.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Slow pace.
Yeah, so that was from Selma to Montgomery. They walked that whole thing in 5 days. And we often, and for my family, when we drove it, it was only an hour. So, an hour worth of driving, and then we would get out at the various places along the route between Selma and Montgomery and see what happened and transpired during those days. But, the idea that you could drive it in an hour versus walk it in 5 days, that's a big difference, right? So, this countercultural time that we enter into is very important. But my guests today are Carolyn Stow, who is the pastor at Sarah Jane Johnson United Methodist Church, and Teressa Sivers, who is the pastor at Central United Methodist Church. And we're talking about Lent and its importance to the life of the church. Now, so we've been talking in larger theological terms about the importance of Lent. But how is your church celebrating Lent this year? And we'll start with Teressa.
Well, it was funny, we were talking just before we started doing the show that we both are using the same resource, kind of. There's this wonderful organization called A Sanctified Art, which does beautiful artwork and poetry and designs these beautiful journeys of worship. And so we're doing the wilderness theme, and we're playing very much on that whole idea of the Exodus and the Israelites wandering for the 40 years, both lost in this kind of wilderness encounter and the scariness that comes with that, but also the transformation that can happen in the wilderness as we encounter God in a whole new way. So we're doing a wilderness theme from Ash Wednesday all through to the end of Holy Week and launching something new on Easter morning.
We're also doing Sanctified Art, and it's interesting because this is actually the first time I've used them. So I'm curious to see how it's going to play out in this context. But we're doing the theme, the series is called In Between. And it's looking at what actually happens when you're in, not necessarily the wilderness, but you're in that time in between, in that cocoon kind of ickiness. Because we're in that. We're in this, we're not where we were. We're not where we're going to be. And we're not sure what that's going to look like. So what do we do now in between? We also find ourselves living in this dichotomous world, right? Is it moral? Is it legal? Right? We're in between this stuff. What should we be doing? So we're going to look at that during Lent. The other thing that we do during Lent is we offer a Wednesday night service.
Nice.
And it's a 2-part service at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 7:30ish. We do a worship experience, and we're going to look at we use materials from United Methodist's discipleship ministries.
Oh, wow.
And they put out a playlist of not only not contemporary, but lay music that will apply to the different Lenten themes. So we're blessed with some amazing musicians these days. So we're going to look at spending our time in this time in between being soothed by the music of the day.
Oh, wow.
Being brought through it that way. And so that's our focus. And then what we do at the second half of the hour is a ministry project, a mission project for other than Sarah Jane Church. So for example, the first Wednesday, we're going to be writing letters to prisoners.
Oh, wow.
And through the jail ministry at Council of Churches. And then we'll give them to the chaplain, and he'll give them to prisoners. 1 week we're going to do through Volunteers in Mission, or excuse me, that's United Methodist. The
Faith in Action.
Faith in Action, thank you very much.
Yeah.
She's going to give letters to the shut-ins. And
wow.
we do some stuff with Gigi's house, and we put together tactile things we're putting together. This one's exciting for us. This year, we launched this about 3 years ago. We're putting together Ziploc bags filled with necessaries that we can hand out to homeless people.
Oh, wow.
We put it in our newsletter, and East Berkshire United Methodist Church got wind of it and said, hey, we want to help you collect this stuff. Can we? Great. More to merrier. So we do those kinds of things. It helps us remember that, this church is important, and we're going to strengthen it and grow it. But there's other folks out there who need our help as well. Right. God's people are God's people, and we're helping them
Amen.
through.
Excellent. So fasting is part of it, but the other part of it is good works. And it seems like you're trying to get your folks to be thinking about, what can we do to embody our faith.
You talked about being raised evangelical. I was raised Catholic, right? So the works were all about it.
Right.
We grew up with that. It's all about what you do, how you live into your faith. So we're delighted to be able to say this is a Catholic approach.
Right.
And I mean small c, right?
Right.
Universal.
Yep.
And Teressa, what are some of the things that your church is doing through Lent?
We really are continuing a lot of the work that we do all year round.
Right.
We do a lot of mini mission projects. We have a really close relationship with the schools in our area, resourcing them with anything that they say they need: underwear, socks, food items, feminine hygiene products, all those pieces. We have a clothing center that's open several days a week with free clothing, our hot meal program every Thursday evening. And then we're a couple little works that we're not quite ready to announce yet, but some things that we're hoping that we're going to launch in the very near future to
now
correspond.
Do you encourage your people to give things up through Lent?
I don't really encourage them to give things up as much as to really find some purposeful ways in which they connect with God in a new way.
Right.
And a lot of times that may require them to sacrifice some time at a certain moment, or to sacrifice giving in a different way, but really encourage them to find that place where they can really deepen that relationship and connection with God. And what do they need to give up for that to happen?
Right.
Catholic, what I was taught was we're as kids, we're told give something up, right? That's to teach us, and the idea is that when you feel like you want whatever it is you give up, that's when you turn to prayer, right? And it's a simple way to do that, but as Paul said, you're not kids anymore. You
Right.
got to
Right.
do this a little deeply now, and so I talk the same way. You're giving up time. You're giving up whatever it is that's keeping you from God, right? That kind of giving up, rather than, because it's what's the end, right? If the
Right.
end is to strengthen your relationship with God, the way I teach it is just do something that you haven't been doing.
Yeah, and that seems to be like a difference when you walk into some churches where everyone is talking, well, I gave up coffee this year, or I've given up, what else have I given up for Lent?
Chocolate.
Chocolate is a big one, yeah. Chocolate,
Junk food.
desserts.
Video games, Facebook.
I gave up meat on Fridays, or
Right.
any number of other things like that, and that seems to be the focus. But the idea that you're supposed to be opening up space for God in your life
Right.
is kind of secondary to that aspect of it at times, right?
Yeah, and I think this is supposed to be something that carries beyond Lent. You're not supposed to give up coffee for 40 days and then on Easter morning, here's my coffee.
Yeah,
Woo, I made it.
I got it.
Instead,
or
it's
mini Sundays, right?
Exactly.
Right. Sundays are mini Easter, so
Yeah.
I get to
I
cheat on
get to have
Sundays.
little espresso.
right. Just as superficial as we were talking at
Right.
the beginning of the show.
and this should be something that enriches your life, and you continue it into the season of Easter and beyond.
Right.
Now I have this new devotional thing I'm doing, or now I'm giving myself in a new mission. Or maybe I've started volunteering at the hot meal program, and now I'm going to continue that. It doesn't end on Easter Sunday. Right. It is this new thing that I am now doing with God and with my community and with one another.
Right. 40 days changes a lifestyle, and
Yeah.
that's the idea.
Transformation.
And
All right,
for-
transforms. Fair.
Yep.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, and 40 days is a right around a good time for you to adopt new habits. I think that it takes, they say 26 days, but oftentimes it's even longer than that, like getting into a month, beyond a month. It's a good habit to be in.
I love that you use that number, because the beginning parts of Lent are not about changing yet.
Right.
The first parts of Lent are about listening to God, about what God wants you to change.
Right.
Right? Where am I falling short? What am I not doing that I need to be doing? And what are our prayers? Illuminate, guide me, direct me, show me.
Right.
And then that would actually fall, going back to what we were originally talking about, like the instant gratification versus long-term discipline. They do intentionally call it a discipline, right? So Lent is a discipline that we follow, and so if you're going to follow it, you have to realize that at the beginning of it, you're kind of crawling, right?
Yeah.
You got to crawl before you can learn how to run.
Right.
So how do you as pastors, like, isn't this part of how you work with people? Do you think, Teresa?
Oh yeah, and one of the things we also do during Lent is we try to give devotional resources to help guide people along that journey. So, and for us this particular year, we have a booklet, a wilderness booklet that they could have printed out and be able to use every day. We have these very beautiful Words for the Wilderness meditation cards that every day you have a card and you pick it up and it's on cardstock, and there's a word on one side and on the other side a prayer. And I love taking it with me all day. I put it like in my purse, or I put it on my dashboard. If I'm driving somewhere, I put it on my desk. And throughout the day, I stop for a moment and there's this word, peace or hope, or there's a series of words. And then we also are using some materials from our own annual conference, the Rest, Work, Play, Rest for the Lenten Soul. So they have many options to choose from. And so this helps us to kind of take this journey to find that in-between time, to find that wilderness time, and to really develop this new holy habit that we're going to have.
I love that holy habit, right?
Yeah.
Superficiality, right? How do we keep this, how do we pace ourselves to do this at a slower pace? And I guess it's an ongoing thing. It's not only during Lent, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is about how we're living our lives. One of my favorite metaphors is a ship, right? We're turning our entire lives towards God. We're not turning a ship on a dime. We got to make this wide berth kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're going to keel over. We don't want to do that.
No, that would be
Right.
No swamp in the
well,
road.
that'd be a really bad thing.
Yeah, right?
That's a
Right?
Titanic.
That's the opposite of what we're shooting for here. We're looking to be upright with God instead of keeled over. So
Yeah, that works. So if folks want to find out what's happening at your congregation and what your church is doing, how can they get in touch with you?
well, the first thing I'm going to say is come to church. 10:30 Sunday mornings. I make announcements every Sunday, 10:30. We're also on YouTube Live, and you can find the link at our website. Give us a call. Come on Tuesday nights. We have an outreach program where we do bikes, repairs, giveaways, food, diapers, all kinds of clothes. So we got a website. Ask friends. We're the church next to the hospital, next to Wilson. So.
Yeah, and how about yours, Teressa?
Same. Our worship services are 8:30 and 11 on Sunday morning, and we're on YouTube at 11, live streamed, and also you can, of course, both of us are archived. You can watch it all during the week anytime you want. Check our website, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all those places, and just give us a call.
I was just going to say, and then there's the old-fashioned dial the phone.
You could actually pick up a phone.
Right? Stop by anytime during the week.
Right.
I remember that Billy Crystal, this routine he used to do, call me.
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone and call me.
Right. It just makes sense.
I think that was on When Harry Met Sally or
Yep, I
something
think
like that, right? Yeah, that was funny. So anyway, I really appreciate both of your congregations and the work that you're doing to help our area be a better place for all God's children. And the themes of in the wilderness and in between time are so amazing and are part of the Lenten celebration that we are in the middle of, and to celebrate new life and the cocoon and how we're going to emerge from that, and that in between time, how it expresses even the wilderness sojourn that we're in, and the idea that we are becoming something in the middle of all of that. That's pretty important to me, and it's been important to my life with faith. And for all of you who are watching today, I pray that you would find that Lenten place for yourself where you can concentrate on your life and be kind and gentle to each other, because the world needs it and they need you. Have a good day.